and welcome to Additive Insight, the original additive manufacturing podcast brought to you by TCT Magazine. I'm Laura Griffiths, TCT Head of Content, and on today's episode, I'm joined by Schendy Kernizan, CEO at RAPID Liquid Print. MIT spinout RAPID Liquid Print made waves earlier this year when it introduced its Levity 3D printer at RAPID TCT, bringing a unique process to the market that aims to overcome the current limitations of 3D printing technology. On this episode, we discuss the technological advancements behind its gravity-free manufacturing process, the applications and materials it's unlocking, and why RLP is intentionally positioning itself not as a 3D printing company, but as a manufacturing process that could spark the world's next great idea. If you like what you hear, don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and for more Additive Insight, head over to tctmagazine.com to get your free print subscription to the magazine and get the biggest 3D printing news stories of the week delivered straight to your inbox with our Additive Insight newsletter. This episode of Additive Insight is sponsored by ASTM International's Additive Manufacturing Centre of Excellence.
So glad to finally have you on the podcast and see you in person, sort of.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to actually see a face and not just through communication through email. So thanks again for having me.
Yeah, definitely. I do want to start with the same question that I ask every person that we invite onto the Additive Insight podcast. And that is, can you remember the first time you actually saw 3D printing, or the first time you kind of had that sort of light bulb moment with the technology, and thought, okay, this is something that I really want to get into?
It wasn't like that long ago, to be honest. I think first few printers I've seen in person were Formlab was actually one of them originally. That was like, oh, this is an interesting technology. So, and I just thought it was interesting, but it wasn't something I was like, oh, this is something I have to gravitate to originally.
So you're here today. We're here to talk about RAPID Liquid Print, which lots of people have been very excited about, particularly over the last year as you've kind of come out of this sort of quieter period and really launched yourself out onto the industry. And for our listeners who may not know who RAPID Liquid Print RLP is, can you just kind of give us the brief? Who is RLP?
Yeah. Well, RAPID Liquid Print is obviously a group of individuals. So we're a company that is spun out of MIT back in 2020. But the technology itself, where we're printing inside of a gel suspension to eliminate the effects of gravity, was something we worked on back in 2015 at the self-assembly lab at MIT. And it started with 4 co-founders, including myself, Bjorn Sparman, our CTO, Skylar Tibbetts, and Jared Locks as co-founders of the company. And now we're a team of 12 full-time individuals here in Charlestown, Massachusetts, that develop or took this technology and now bring it to market as a printer.
Mm-hmm. And you've got quite a team that, as you say, came out of MIT. When did you realize that you had really something here that you could turn into its own thing, into its own company?
Research started in 2015 originally, and Bjorn and I actually were desk mates at the self-assembly lab. So when we first met, we were kind of on the same project from day one.
Oh, nice.
We started to cross path on different projects, and one of them was kind of the development of this additive manufacturing that he was a lead for at MIT. And when we first showcased the process, it was in 2017, I believe, at Design Miami as the show. Well, at a robot arm that's kind of moving around inside of a tank. And we had a bag design as a first sample that we're showing people. And we saw a lot of excitement around it. And after that show, that's when we all sat down as a team and thought, oh, this might be something worth pursuing further and then actually commercializing and deciding who was going to be full-time and how do we start it. So 2018 on paper, we kind of put the name of the company and decide to form it.
You talked a little bit at the start there about what this technology is, but can you go a little bit deeper on that? Kind of give us an overview of how it actually works, because it's very different to anything else that we're used to seeing in the AM industry at the moment.
Most people, when they think of AM 3D printing, they're always thinking of something that is being built from the bottom up. Usually you're waiting for one layer to cure in order to go to the next one, whether that you're depositing a filament or you're curing a resin. That's the image that usually comes to mind. Even though that process has brought a lot of benefit and it's really kind of changed how people make on a prototyping level. Our process is going a little bit beyond that. We're kind of tackling and looking at what are the limitations of going and building something in that process. And instead, within that gel, what we're doing is actually 3D drawing in space, ultimately, is what you're doing. So you have that freedom to deposit material in a space and allow it to actually sit in that 3D environment and allow it to cure. So what it does is it allows you to make flexible parts that are impossible to be made unless you're doing a casting or molding process, because it's a liquid that you need to shape. With our process, we're allowing that liquid to cure inside of this water-based gel without the need for a mold or any kind of physical element in order to make something flexible that would otherwise be pulled by gravity and deform. Our gel keeps it in space, which is why we call it gravity-free manufacturing.
And there's a few different elements within that. As you mentioned, the gel, you're kind of drawing sort of within this free space. What would you describe as the like the central innovation that's happening here?
Yeah, it's a combination of all of it, right? It's a combination of the process, right? You're taking a drawing element, right, or a depositing element. You're combining it into this suspension system, and you're changing how the material flows, and that requires not just a hardware advancement, but also a software development as well. So as a result, when we started doing this, we were kind of using the slicing method that you're always starting from the bottom and building up, and eventually realized, hey, we could go beyond that, and decided to kind of develop our own software to understand that our goal is to always start at one point and try to end the part without ever stopping. That's kind of the beauty and the uniqueness of this process, is how can we create a toolpath that doesn't stop during the printing process, so that you end up with really isotropic parts that are not weak because you're waiting on the layer and layer approach to be able to make that part.
And I said this when we first got on, but this is one of the very few technologies, and I've been in additive now for around 10 years, and it's one of the few times, and I think people have collectively been like, this is something very different. We've never seen anything like this before. So can you tell us, what has that been like so far? What's kind of the industry feedback been like? I mean, have you felt that general sense of newness, people feeling like this is something genuinely different?
That question brings me back to a moment I had myself and Bjorn back when we were spinning out the company and trying to figure out what is the right market, how do we actually start a company, and who do we target? And there was an advisor through the MIT kind of mentoring program, and they said, this technology it's attractive, it's easy to fall in love with it, but it's also why it's hard, right? To also sell, right? People will see it and think it's cool. And then now our job is to figure out, how does this work and solve a problem to people? And at the time, I didn't fully understand what they meant by that. But now that I'm in it, and it's exciting to see the fact that people are like, wow, this is really unique, in that you guys have really taken a different approach to additive manufacturing. And the main reason is because we are interested in solving the idea that kept saying, well, additive is only good for prototyping and you can't scale it beyond that. And we see how, when it comes to soft elastomers, rubbers, that you're outsourcing the final production to casting and injection molding. And we're bridging that gap with that technology. And that's what makes this exciting for us. But additionally, for individuals who work within the company, we're constantly coming up with new ideas, new IP of what could be interesting. How could we actually make this even more interesting and cooler? And that's part of the fun and also the headache of managing that.
One thing I do want to make sure that we get across is that I think this is one of those technologies where you really want to see it and you want to touch the parts. And it is one of the things, like seeing it, touch it, sort of to believe it. So can you sort of talk through the simplicity of the fact that when you finish this part, you can literally grab it out, rinse it, and it's done? What's kind of that start to finish process?
It's we get that comment a lot about, like, wow, it's so simple. Like, how come no one else is doing it? If it was easy, I'm sure there'd be a lot of people trying to do it. But the simplicity of being able to hit print, have your parts finish, and without having to put on gloves, mask, etc., you can just take that part out of the gel and you're really just rinsing it with water and you have a finished product. Is exceptional, sustainable, cost effective. It's a different way to manufacture. And to us, that's important, right? A lot of our customers today have to pay a lot of money for the molding or casting method, and then for the physical inventory that they've created now. And every time they create or change that dimension, they're starting over from scratch. Our platform and our system, we're providing a digital solution that gives them flexibility, but also speed in terms of production and allowing you to make something fast, edit it as well quickly, and go into production within hours and not weeks or months that they're used to today. So yeah, the simplicity of it is great, obviously. And to your point earlier, when we showcased this at RAPID earlier this year, people were so used to seeing videos of the printing and never actually interacting with it that one of the funny comments we got was, "Oh my God, you guys are actually real. This is not AI. It's not something creative." That was funny, humorous, but obviously cool to get that feedback as well. That like, wow, this is amazing and exciting to people to see it in person.
Yeah, I think that's like the biggest compliment you can get in 2025. It's not AI, it's real. Can we talk a little bit more about the materials then? Because once again, that is something that when you actually touch these parts, you realize it is that soft touch, these flexible parts that you can make. Can you tell us a bit more about the materials that you're working with and the possibilities within that?
Our approach has always been about what are the criticism that exists within additive manufacturing? How can we tackle those and solve for them? And many additive manufacturing are focused on kind of plastics, resins, metal, and instead of trying to be another solution out there that does that, we wanted to kind of take a different approach. Like this non-planar gravity-free process allows us to go on the softer side. And to us, that's kind of the sweet spot for us as a company, is to be able to accomplish that. So because of that, we're pushing how things are made today with injection molding, right? Injection molding has been a system that's been used for decades, centuries now, and it's great for what it does, but it doesn't, I think, in my opinion, push the innovation that we're trying to push. We're trying to innovate here with our process. And to me, when you hear the word gravity-free manufacturing, I like to think it triggers the thought of this is futuristic. This is about the future and next step. So the process is taking your standard industry standard materials, elastomers. Commercially at the moment, we're only printing silicone, but we have plans for larger portfolio of materials. But we're taking the same thing that's used for casting and injection molding and just taking our process to do it. So we're not starting from scratch in terms of formulation. We're buying the raw material from suppliers. So we know that the specs and technical performance is there within those materials. So that it gives ease of mind for customers who are looking to onboard this with their own product.
And what kind of customers are you working with already? Where's the most interest really coming from? Because I know you've mentioned like the bag earlier, and that's something that first drew me to what RLP was doing. But where are you seeing the most traction at the moment?
Yeah, because of the speed and the ease of customization, when we first left the self-assembly lab, we thought about what is an application where customization is important. And we looked at the medical field and orthotics and prosthetics, where individuals are either missing limbs or need support for a limb, was kind of an immediate no-brainer for us. It's like, oh, this is something we can do. We started with something called a silicone liner for them. So if someone's missing a limb, there's a sock-like interface that they wear in order to put a hard leg or support on top of it. And to date, because of insurance, depending where you live, people go for the small, medium, large because it's more affordable or insurance covers it. When you need a custom solution, the out-of-pocket cost can be substantial and hard for people to actually afford it. In our mind, we think that's wrong. So, our first approach was, well, we know we can make this custom. We know we can make it at the same price as an off-the-shelf solution. So let's price it that way. And that created traction and got people interested in the process itself. From there, we started learning about other applications from automotive, looking at seals and gasket for aftermarket products or products that are no longer used or made where customers need a solution at a low volume, but they don't want to pay for the cost of the mold because it doesn't make sense. So doing seals and gasket for, industrial application, even robots, etc., is something that we bring advantage to, including, one of my favorite samples is doing features where you're combining, a standard lattice with the bladder inside of it. Now you're creating a new feature that currently requires multiple parts to be assembled post-making, where we're able to print it as one unit and create something that you can't do any other way than with our process.
You're listening to Additive Insight, brought to you in partnership with ASTM International. I'm joined today by Lauren Edney, Additive Manufacturing Project Engineer at the ASTM Additive Manufacturing Centre of Excellence. Lauren, it's great to have you here.
No, thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
ASTM is well known for standards, but your work in additive and advanced manufacturing goes well beyond that. So can you give us a snapshot of what the AM Centre of Excellence is all about?
Yeah, of course. The AMC is ASTM's global innovation hub for advancing additive manufacturing. We work across the entire life cycle of AM adoption. So we identify at the early stage kind of those gaps, and then technology readiness through to actually deploying real-world solutions through standards development, workforce training, certification, and also in delivering strategic advisory services. Our real main focus is to make AM more robust, scalable, and trusted, whilst also being easily integrated into an organization's industrial workflow.
So how do you go about doing that exactly?
Oh, good question. So we operate through a framework which we call the enablement engine, and this is structured around 3 interconnected core phases. First up, we have the pre-standardization phase, and within this, we identify gaps, we conduct applied research, we can assess the technology readiness, generate some data, and also build strategic roadmaps to prepare technologies for their broader adoption. We then move into standardization, where we enable the development of globally aligned consensus-based standards. I would say our latest initiative in this case is the ASTM AM certification program, which is an end-to-end certification program for manufacturers that support your large OEM organizations, such as Boeing, Stryker, or General Motors. Finally, then, in the post-standardization phase, we focus on action, scale, and also impact. We deliver workforce training, we offer certification for facilities and personnel, and then we provide those advisory services we mentioned. So that's where our Woolers associates really play a major role. They provide strategic and practical insights, as well as intelligence to help organizations navigate that market entry, due diligence, technology implementation, long-term planning, and also decision-making across the AM value chain.
When I looked into the organization a little deeper, I was pretty impressed by the team behind all of this. So can you just tell us a little bit about the size and the capability of that team?
Yeah, of course. And that's a key part, I'd say, of the value that AMCWE offers. So the AMCWE employs over 40 of the most respected experts in the field, and we cover everything from materials, processes, applications, and we do this across a number of sectors, including aerospace, medical, and transportation. Our Woolers report also includes contributions from more than 230 experts worldwide, and they represent some of the most esteemed organizations within the industry. Every October, we also look to unite the community at our International Conference on AM, or ICANN as some may know it. And this is our flagship event where we host nearly 1,000 technical presentations, and standards, strategy, and science really do come together and connect in one powerful forum.
That's pretty comprehensive then. Where can people learn more?
So you can explore all of our different projects, programs, publications, and certification programs at amcwe.org. Whether you are a startup, a OEM, or even a government agency, we're here to help the industry adopt and integrate AM within your organization with real confidence.
So that was amcoe.org, and we'll link it in the episode description. Thanks again to ASTM for supporting this episode of Additive Insight.
With these things that you can do now, that weren't possible with other 3D printing processes, and also just the way that this prints as well, as you say, gravity free, you just kind of draw in, I'll say thinner. Does Does that require like a new sort of relearning of how to design this particular process? Is that kind of like an extra level of complexity from that side?
Yeah, I would say it's a learning opportunity for customers. One that we have to manage when we meet new customers is people assume, oh, we're another 3D printing company, and try to avoid using or describing us as 3D printing. And we use the word manufacturing on purpose to kind of let people know this is a different approach, but there's benefits to that approach. Sometimes customers come to us with a model that's designed for other 3D printing processes. And through conversation, we're either able to showcase and explain to them, you don't have to manufacture it this way. With our process, there's actually new possibilities now that are unlocking new ways of thinking that can actually make this solution either better or faster. You don't have to compromise with that. So that's one aspect of it on the customer side. And for us internally, it's about pushing the boundary of like, okay, this is, instead of thinking about manufacturing a certain way, how do we create content and information that drives new innovation internally as a company? But once we give those tools to a customer, what will they create? And that's what's exciting to me is like, we could try to guess what we could make with this, and it's always fun. And we have plenty of ideas that we can come up with internally, but we are already seeing how customers are like, oh, you know what? This is a new idea now. Like this unlocked idea, a new feature that will be beneficial to my patients, to my customers, etc. So that's exciting and experience.
Can you give us any sort of hints as to what's the most surprising thing that someone's come to you with and you thought, oh, I wish we'd have thought of that, or I would have never thought this could have been applied to this particular application?
There's a new project right now that's within the fashion space. Surprisingly, again, this is not something that we strive to focus on, but we're getting some traction there. And even though I can't say what it is, it's definitely something where internally we go, oh, that is not what I thought this technology could be useful. But it's exciting to see that people are thinking in a unique way because of the way that we make things with our process. So, unfortunately, I can't give a lot of details, which is at times frustrating, but also exciting because we do work with people who are looking to create new products and bring to market. And we look forward to when it's become public so we can actually, showcase that.
Always happens with the best stuff, doesn't it? Great work, you can't talk about it.
No.
And you touched on it earlier that, the team are always very, excited to be working on new things. You've always got ideas for like new IP and things like that. I'm wondering where you think this technology could go to. Is it something that you think could touch on multi-material? Can you go quite large scale with it? What kind of things are you thinking about?
Yeah, I think you're hitting all the things that we dream about internally, and showcasing the machine to the public too, or hearing feedback on. Bigger is something that we've been requested to see if it's possible. And luckily with our process, and, we designed with that in mind, that it's a system that can be configured to be smaller or bigger. Talking about building scale application, that's one aspect of it. Multi-material is also something that we've dabbled in. And, in this sample that I'm holding here on the video is taking multi-durometer. So you're taking the same silicone, but you're changing the softness and the thickness of the print within the object or the geometry. So you don't have to stop or combine it post-printing, but you can do that on the fly during the printing process. But thinking about, multi-head printing, having multiple heads printed together in the system, or all things that we dream about, and constantly filing new IP, which is something I think, when I think about the team, I'm not just talking about our internal engineers, et cetera, but I'm also thinking about our investors and the way that they think about IP and how we develop and continue to grow the company is something that they've brought in terms of their expertise to the table.
Mm-hmm. And where is it at now? I remember when you and I spoke, it must have been around a year ago now. I know that you were offering the technology kind of as a service internally, but is this out there with other customers now?
So when we first spun out, there was a lot of pressure about, where is your printer? Because I think that's always been the mold and the model that people follow, that you have a new technology, you're selling printers. And, we were very cautious about taking that approach where, sure, we could design a printer, but we're not sure if we're designing something that someone will actually purchase. So as a result, as we touched upon, we have a design and production service that we provide to customers. And it enables us to understand the applications that are out there that we're a good fit for, but also the ones that we're probably not a good fit for now, but can actually develop for in the future. So with that, we've been able to onboard customers, print for them, have low run production with those customers in the different industries that I've mentioned earlier: automotive, medical, consumer goods, etc. And for the past 4 years, we've at the same time developed the machine, right? We've developed different versions of that machine. So there's a couple of beta versions out in the field that have been used or being used currently. There's 3 actually, to be exact, in the medical field. So, and it spans from the US to even the European market, where customers are using it in-house to make their parts for patients. We're getting feedback from them to continue developing the machine, which is why, after last year, we reached a point where we said, this is it. We know the build volume that we want. We know the features that we want to incorporate with the machine. So we built what we now announce is Levity, and announced that at RAPID, and have sold. We have an early adopter program where we're selling a handful to customers, and have sold over 75% of our goal for this year, and looking to close that out and deliver to those customers by the end of the year, and then open that up to larger pool for 2026.
I want to touch on something that you mentioned earlier, and it was about the way that you're positioning yourselves, not necessarily as a 3D printing company or technology, but as a manufacturing process. Do you think that's an important distinction right now, particularly as AM is kind of maturing, but also as we want to really take the technology out of the AM bubble and actually get it into that wider manufacturing conversation?
It's all about messaging. And for us, we want to be, myself, Bjorn, the team, we're all about being as transparent and honest about what we offer with this technology, and not trying to oversell the capabilities. And from day one, it's always been about, how do we create something that goes beyond prototyping and can be real? It can be used in the real world. And especially with a lot of the news that's happening around additive manufacturing, and people saying, people have always promised this, and it hasn't been done to the scale that people are expecting, that it is critical for us to say, hey, it's a manufacturing solution, and it's not just a prototyping tool. And I know we've heard a lot of good customers / fans who said, I want to be able to use it one day. And, at one point we'll have a version of that's maybe more prototyping scale. But our solution right now gives you the opportunity to prototype if you want, and then move into production into one system, and not having to kind of outsource.
You talked about the dreams that you and the team have, the ambitions that you've got. I wonder, what will success look like for you with this technology, with this product moving forward? What kind of impact do you want this to have?
A lot of it has been happening in terms of, we've always talked internally about the fact that the parts that we make are parts that people interact with, and providing a solution, or seeing people come up with a solution with our process that benefits an individual health-wise, or makes a solution more sustainable because you're using less material, you're saving time, and it's more cost-effective, is the start of the journey for us in terms of what we're promising and what we're delivering on the market. But the future for me, and how I see it, is, how does this technology spark the next biggest idea out in the world, biggest solution that takes, whether that's humanity and beyond, to a new solution that, we could have only dreamed of, and our process is what unlocked that. So to me, that's what I'm interested in seeing, and creating kind of that big vision, and finding the partners that will actually help make that as a possibility. So whether in collaboration, or just by using the printer itself to come up with that solution.
And is that sort of the path now then? Is that what you're looking to do? Work with more partners? What's happening in the near future?
Yeah, so by selling the printer, obviously we're giving gravity-free manufacturing to customers now to bring in-house and use, whether they're using it just to produce one specific product at cost or faster than other solution. That's great. But additionally, what we want to do is with our design and production side of things is to find the long-term strategic partnerships across different industries and be very intentional about the solutions that we're creating that is with RLP process in mind, not coming to us with a different process and try to make it fit with our technology, but starting with our technology and creating something new. And those partnership is what we want to grow in the next year. And like I said, don't want it to be one market, but multiple markets, and being very strategic and mindful about how many of those do we go after and how fast do we scale doing it.